Hey.
Hello. How are you?
Not bad. Yourself?
Not bad. Do you want to hear something funny?
I do.
I am starting. Continue. So I'm gonna be jumping from meeting to meeting with no rest, except for after this meeting I have 30 minutes, and the end of my meetings end at 2 a.m.
Oh, what time is it there now?
It's 4 p.m.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
Like 9 hours of uninterrupted. No, it's more like 10 hours of uninterrupted meetings. Obviously, I'm not going to make it all, but
yeah.
Meetings.
Yeah, feel bad for you.
Oh, I'm going to be fine. I mean, I'm going to skip as many meetings and I need to, obviously, because life happens.
Yep.
But yeah, being in a different time zone sometimes is hard.
I like the jacket, man.
Yeah, well, you're gonna see it more often because it's starting to get chilly. Fall is finally catching up.
Damn.
All right. I forgot IRC. I'm not sure anyone is left in IRC. That makes me a little bit sad.
Yeah.
Right. I just pinged Wim in case he can join. Yeah, I'm excited about things today.
That's good. I'm assuming not your meetings.
No. Yes and no. I mean,
this one, I'm sure.
This one is always fun. Hey, Gabe.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay. I think Wim got the ping, and I think we're good. Otherwise, we wait, and meeting takes forever. Oh, I already started the broadcast. All right, cool. So there may be some stuff that I previously shared. Sorry for not telling you. I didn't know. This has been broadcasting. So hey, thank you for coming. I think we have a couple of important things to discuss today. So I want to jump right in. I know that Sebastian has some news about GraphQL, what happened with last time that he was here. I want to make sure we have time to discuss that. So if I'm gonna just say, if you have anything to share, just do it. But I think that we can do some core REST stuff first. Any updates on that front?
I don't think there's a huge amount of new stuff since last week. There's still a whole bunch of things that have been in RTBC that are blockers for core REST and serialization, and that also affect GraphQL and JSON API. Actually, that is something I started using a few weeks ago, since Contrib Kanban actually now allows me to create new boards based on a tag. So if you go to contribkanban.com/sprint/API first initiative, it lists everything that has the API first initiative tag. So I really encourage anybody who encounters problems in Contrib modules, but also the JSON API and GraphQL maintainers to tag things with this, so that committers have an overall view of all things API first, whether it's in core or outside. And so you can see there that 13 issues got committed in the last 2 weeks, and 10 more are RTBC currently. And I think one of them included a JSON API issue that Matteo committed yesterday. So this gives you a good overview. So yeah, that's basically the list of things that are RTBC, a bunch of test coverage, one routing system bug, one type data feature addition that will help JSON API core and probably also GraphQL, field API bug, and so on. So a bunch of underlying blockers. I think that's basically it.
Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing that. So things are more or less the same, like the important stuff is in the same state as last week.
Yep.
Okay, cool. And if you're watching this, thank you, Matt Clement, for building the content Kanban and making it easy for everyone else. For JSON API, I just want to give a big shout out to Gabe because we just landed a big refactor of the query building system, and that will make it easy to test and maintain that part, which, to be honest, was a little bit of a black box to me before. Now I understand it, which I like. And yeah, there was a lot of work. It took a long time because we need to be careful. And I also jumped the gun a little bit, but I think it was a safe call. I know that Gabe wanted to add something else, but I don't think it was necessary for the refactor, and it can totally happen in a separate issue because it wasn't a fix. It was a new feature that we wanted to include in there. So that has been.
The patch was big enough, right? 140K, I think. So it makes sense to split it up into multiple issues. So yes, good call.
Thank you, Gabe. That was a terrific work, you and everyone involved. So yeah, the issue that is left, actually, I wanted to bring it up because I know that Simon wanted to be here to comment on it. He's building bidirectional relationships on JSON API. So basically what he's doing is he's building a computed field to have he has a field parent relationship, and he wants to access the children of it also from within the parent. So this is the typical bidirectional relationship. He's building a computed field to compute the references to the children. And right now, I think that the state is relationships work in JSON API, but they are not traversable for nested filters and things like that. So so he's going to be working on a test and a patch for that. So I think that that's it for JSON API. No new things for auth to or sub requests or any of the other stuff that we usually update on. One thing for Drupal distributions. Matthew, I can't remember the last name, the creator of Gatsby, he did a presentation on Badcamp this weekend, and he's using Drupal for doing his stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool. He's using Contenta, but in general, he's using all the modules that we describe here, and he seems to like it. So I think that's great. And yeah, I don't have anything else. Does anyone have any others? Gatsby, it's a static generator based on React. Maybe Sebastian knows more about this.
Oh yeah, I saw a post about that.
Yeah, it's basically just a React-based static site generator, like Jekyll, but in JavaScript. And the thing that he built is he built a system where you can pull data using GraphQL or JSON API or whatever, and then generate the static sites based on that instead of having it in Markdown or so. That's it.
Oh, sorry, muted. That's pretty cool. Does anyone have anything that they wanted to bring up, an issue or a concern or topic?
I hope that Fuby And perhaps Philip will be able to talk a bit about GraphQL since they did 2 releases in the last 1.5 weeks.
Yeah. So we have got the last alpha version out. The beta is probably, we are going to publish the beta this week. We have refactored a large part of the module again, or I'd say everything basically. There are no sub-modules anymore, except for one. We have moved the whole plugin architecture and everything into the base module, and then we have GraphQL_core, which implements plugins on behalf of core modules and generates the schema for the whole of core, views, whatever, and it uses like you install the module and you have a schema. There's no configuration. You don't need to go to the field UI and display formatters or whatever. It's all just there.
That is so exciting.
Yes, it's really cool. And schemas themselves are also plugins now. We renamed a few things, moved a couple of things around, added more tests. We extracted some of the modules which are not related to core directly, or do some additional things. Like, for instance, we have a module called GraphQL Twig that brings GraphQL to the templating system, to the theme system. So you can actually write GraphQL queries in your Twig templates and then access the data returned from that in your theme. There's a JSON module which does something with URL fields, and you can do requests and then return the JSON return from that JSON from the HTTP request. There's an XML module, GraphQL XML, which allows you to parse HTML in a body field, for instance, and then find paragraphs in a body field, for instance. All of these funky things have been extracted into their own module namespaces. We just posted them. So really, GraphQL in GraphQL Core, which is what you get when you download the GraphQL module, covers all of Drupal core without all of these extras. One thing that we are going to add to the module after beta is a way for you to, through configuration, narrow down on the schema and add aliases and remove fields from the schema. But we are doing it the other way around. Previously, you had to configure what you want to expose, and now you need, in the future, you need to configure what you don't want to expose. So you get the schema from the beginning, but you can fine-tune it.
So that is following in the footsteps of JSON API with the JSON API extras module, where JSON API by default exposes the core schema, and then by installing an additional module and configuring things there, you can choose to limit it down to a subset of that. Correct?
That's what we'll do. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to be a submodule or just included. I don't know. Yeah, that's basically it. Oh yeah, we added the ability to have multiple schemas, so you can have as many schemas as you like, and also the configuration is per schema from that user interface that we will add. So you can have a schema that is protected and only accessible for logged in users, and a public schema or whatever. Yeah.
Well, to me that sounds exciting, and sounds like it's now on a path where it is very much already architected in a way that it can move into core in the current shape. So that sounds super exciting to me. I hope that other people, what do other people think about this? Because this is something Sebastian, Phoebe, and Philip and I discussed at length at DrupalCon. And to my surprise, they've already done everything. So does anybody else feel like, well, wow, this paves a path, or any concerns that remain? Or
I think it's pretty huge. I mean, we're definitely all the stuff that we were thinking about in Reservoir. This is addresses, I think, all of that as far as just being able to turn it on and have it be used. So that's great.
Right. Yeah. For Contented, this will make the onboarding a lot easier as well, because just installing the GraphQL and GraphQL core module will mean that you install Contented, you can access everything via both JSON API and GraphQL. So
yeah. What I can speak about that is that without knowing exactly about the details of that conversation, that was exactly the same thing that that we asked in the content issue queue, that this is what we think we should happen for this to go in. So I think this is perfect. The only question that I think that remains is, do we want to push both efforts, JSON API and GraphQL, to move into core? Should we consolidate into one and move the efforts, coalesce the efforts into, for instance, GraphQL, which seems to be the newer technology that brings more, I don't know, at least it seems to me that it's more opinionated, and I don't know. That's an open question. I don't mean to reach to an agreement here, but at least there's merit
that
to
fight
think
is not
about
for
it.
me to fight. I'll be gone starting 6th of December. I'll not be here for a year or two. So I'll still be around, but I'll not have the same amount of time. Philip is going to take over maintainership of the module. And personally, I don't care if it's in core or not. There are benefits, there are downsides to it. Obviously, adoption would grow, which means that, but then also maybe traction would slow down because it's more complicated to get things done. There's two sides to this thing. I don't know, like that's for someone else to decide, I guess. I don't have a strong feeling towards either.
I didn't fully catch when you're leaving.
I'm leaving on the 6th of December.
Okay. Well, I wish you the best in your ventures, and hope to have you back. And thank you, Philip, for stepping up on maintaining GraphQL. That's great that someone that knows the code base so intimately.
I apologize on behalf of Philip already ahead of time. I couldn't find anyone better. No, I'm just kidding. He's really good. No, he wrote the whole plugin architecture and everything. So it's in the best hands. It's in the best hands that I can imagine. So.
Philip, I think you just got public permission to tease Phoebe back or to slap him in.
We always do that anyway.
Yeah, that's our thing.
Okay.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah, I'm particularly GraphQL. I played around quite a lot this week with it because it's not bound to HTTP. Like you can use GraphQL. It has like a little bit more generally inside core. The one example is Trick, but like we could use it for other purposes, like saving an entity or all kinds of things.
Migrations.
So I think like the potential for dogfooding is actually than pure JSON API.
Was Daniel choppy for everyone else?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, very choppy.
I can try to summarize what I think that Daniel said. That GraphQL is not bound to just HTTP, and unlike JSON API, all the rest is not really bound to HTTP. I think that it would be very hard not to, to do the implementation, not to do it, unless GraphQL, it wouldn't be that hard, because it's TCP mostly. I don't know, but it opens the potential to do other things that are not just HTTP transactions, like reset migrations or using it inside of Twig, etc. Did I summarize it well, Daniel? Did I leave anything out? Okay, that's a +1. No, I agree, and it's great to have Philip on board and on this plan. Not sure if we want to have a dedicated meeting to discuss this issue in particular, if we want to pursue both options at the same time, if we want to go after both of them but prioritize one, because there's always going to be a product call and the product people that can make that call are not here typically. But even if they say that let's do both, we are a community with limited resources, right? So
how did you
we
make
want
the decision for JSON API? When and why did you decide to move it into core, or to forego that initiative to move it into core?
There was Wim, you know this better than I do.
Actually, this is just something we talked about at length, I think, at DrupalCon New Orleans at this point, and you were there as well, Sebastian. So this is the overall plan issue based on discussions with you, with Matteo, with Daniel, with Dick Olson. So all the things that have been going on in API first world are core REST, JSON API, OAuth 2, GraphQL, workflows, and related to that, the relaxed web services module that Dick Olson and others have worked on. And so ideally, Drupal supports data to be exchanged, so both read and written, in multiple formats, because depending on what kind of client you're building, there are different preferences. There are certain things that are easier in GraphQL. There are certain things that are easier in JSON API. So the idea has been since then to make Drupal supports all of the most common data exchange formats, if you will. So that is JSON API, which is JSON RESTful in a opinionated way, so that there's less discussion about it than in core REST. And there is GraphQL. There is no explicit sign-off from a core committer where an explicit decision has been made to move JSON API into core. But there has always been the intent based on this issue, based on those discussions, based on what we hear in the wider web world and the wider web community, that there is a lot of demand for APIs. GraphQL is an increasingly strong demand, obviously, but there is still a lot of demand for RESTful APIs as well. So I don't have a much clearer answer than that, other than moving it into core at a stage where things are not yet fully stable, not yet fully mature, is something you would want to avoid for at least two reasons. The first being things move slower in Drupal core, so you wouldn't want to go through a very lengthy stabilization process in Drupal core. And second, if it is not as reliable, not as mature as it ideally would be from the beginning, then people will try Drupal with JSON API or with GraphQL and be left with a negative experience, right? And that is kind of what happened with core REST for lots of people, because Drupal 8 shipped with a REST API that we claimed to be stable. We claimed Drupal 8 was stable. We claimed that the REST API was also stable, but unfortunately the REST API had and still has quite a few flaws. And so that is what we've been working on for the past year and a bit, to make core REST stable, but also to fix lots of foundational issues so that JSON API and GraphQL do not suffer from these. One of the issues we're currently working on is things like taxonomy terms have parents, but the parents are not exposed in core REST, they're not exposed in JSON API, and unless GraphQL has worked around it, they're also not exposed in GraphQL. So we're working on fixing those at a foundational level. So core REST is kind of serving as the pave the path thing, and then JSON API and GraphQL can both reach a point of stability. And then, yes, the decision is open. It's not like we've decided this or this is what's going to happen. But until the foundations are stable, it's also very hard for GraphQL or JSON API to really proclaim, well, we're fully stable, we support all the things that Drupal can do, does, stores, provides. It's kind of impossible to say that, and it's kind of a nightmare to support it. And so now we're getting to the point where there's full test coverage, where all of the foundational problems are fixed. And so now we're getting to the point where JSON API is getting mature, GraphQL is obviously also getting mature, and so now we can have a far better informed decision, I think, because lots of those problems of the past have been solved, but still, I think that the one big thing that we need to take into account is supportability / test coverage. How certain are we of the maturity of this thing? Is it truly supportable? Because for core REST, it's been kind of a nightmare. I hope that made sense.
On top of that, I want to add that there are a couple of things. One is that we created in the project, in the ideas project, we created an issue to gather consensus that it would be a good idea to put it in core. Also, it's been in the roadmap for the API First initiative and the Drupal core project. As of now, it says that JSON API stabilize in this release cycle, which is kind of in between, and then it may get in 8.6. It's been in the roadmap for a little bit longer. I think it's because of that ideas project issue where we put it there, we got sign off and we got approved by the initiative coordinators. So if you or Philip or Philip or whoever wants to create that same issue, I'm sure that you will not find any resistance to add it into roadmaps. At least consider it, and then we can have the deeper discussion on what are the benefits, the places where maybe JSON API may be a little bit more mature at this point, more people are using it and test it and run into edge cases, but GraphQL may have a more solid foundation, how it's built from the schema to the end, and it's, instead of being just the pure pieces of the puzzle, is the solid thing that gives us a better understanding on what's going on. So yeah, I think that having that issue created and put it up there, and hopefully everyone here will gather around and give support there. I think it's a good idea to have it officialized, I guess.
Yeah, so I just pasted a link for the similar issue that Matteo has been talking about for JSON API. So proposing JSON API to be added as an experimental module. So what he's saying is that we want to have a similar issue for adding GraphQL as an experimental module. The issue link I pasted before, it's 22 minutes past the hour. That one is about the big umbrella API First initiative issue, where GraphQL has been mentioned since the very beginning as well, as one of the things we want to get to. Sebastian, did what I said and what Matteo said actually answer your question, or did it just cause more questions maybe?
Well, I guess it just answered the question that there is no such thing as the one reason to put something into core.
Exactly.
And,
yeah.
We just have to discuss it, I guess, and come to a conclusion at some point. I mean, I don't think that Philip has any issues with that. At the end of the day, it's his call because he is going to be the person moving that initiative, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, I'm in no hurry because I think that we still need to stabilize and to test.
Okay. Yeah, I personally think that is probably wise just for your sanity, my sanity, everybody's sanity, because I'm sure that there's going to be edge cases. And that's like, there's always going to be things that we didn't think of, but to have a pretty comprehensive, but not fully comprehensive suite of test coverage for things like, what if I add a new field type or I extend an entity and add a new base field to it? What are the impact of doing such things on the exposed API for JSON API and GraphQL? Dealing with those edge cases in a solid way is going to save a lot of trouble. And in the meantime, people can use the contract module. People are massively using the JSON API module, and I predict that the same will be true for GraphQL as soon as it reaches beta. The same happened when JSON API tagged its first beta release. So I think you'll start seeing a lot of feedback pouring in as soon as that happens. And yeah, based on how much problems are reported and how satisfied people are, I think it's possible to move faster or slower in moving it into core, if we want to move it into core, of course, because by definition, it's going to slow things down, and you're going to have a very strict backwards compatibility things to take into account as soon as you make any change that affects any client. which is hard.
Yeah. That journey towards stability, for context, in JSON API it took us 6 months to get from beta to stable, and it's been 6 months since it was stable to today, more or less. So that's kind of the idea of the timelines of when things got tagged with respect to GraphQL. It's been a relatively, with that strategy, this few months, like since we tagged stable, it's been a relatively smooth ride, I would say. Not big issues because of having that long period of beta testing, which is something that you already did, right? So I think that puts us in a good place as well.
Yeah,
we've been using it on like nearly 4 projects now. Actually, that's not true. We have been using it on 10 projects or more because the one client that we are using it with, they are building multiple websites with it. And we've been using it for 2 years now. So
yeah, exactly. So I think that probably GraphQL is going to be able to stabilize faster because exactly the experience that you already have, the fact that it's been proven in production on big sites, big deployments, plus the fact that you're building on top of a GraphQL PHP library that is well tested as far as I know, that is very deeply tested as well. So in lots of the logic, the test coverage is already taken care of by other people, by another project, which is a benefit that JSON API does not have. So I don't see a reason why GraphQL could not get to maturity even faster, to be honest.
Yeah, hopefully that will happen. So yeah, I told you would be excited about today's meeting. I forgot to mention something. If anyone has anything else to talk about this GraphQL getting older, getting to the prom dance or whatever, I don't know American things. Anyways,
Sebastian is going to wear the dress.
So you're gonna give that band with the flower, right? I don't know the names. Anyways, so I wanted to mention that the thing that we talked about last week about generating specific schemas and validate against those in JSON API. That's there is a patch for that. Wim, if you have time, it would be great to get some thoughts. It's in a raw state, but it already caught some issues, not with JSON API, but when you have JSON API extras installed with the schema generation, which is kind of a, that's why I like GraphQL. One of the things that I like about GraphQL is it's a monolithic solution to all this, which is ironic, I guess. But yeah, having the schemas live in one module, then the extras, etc., makes it a little bit of moving pieces. But it's an easy fix in the schemata module. I'm going to be submitting that fix later this week. But yeah, that's what happened. Anyone else has anything to close this call?
If there's nothing else, I just want to ask the GraphQL maintainers, now that we have them on the call, like, what do you feel should be the next steps? What are your ambitions for the GraphQL project, or are you not sure yourself yet? Do you want it to be in core?
Oh, for that question, do we want to be in core? I think that question is a little bit early. I think we should do a full release first, stable release, and then talk about that. We want to, like, the next steps, the things that we have in mind for the module outside of that question is test coverage, get to close as possible, get to 100% as close as possible. We are at 60% roughly now. And there's some bits and pieces which still need to be tested, obviously, which lack test coverage entirely at the moment. It is fairly solid anyhow. 60% is something that most contrib modules, I guess, will never reach or have never reached. But yeah, we want to have more there. That's obviously also what we are looking for help for. Other than that, the user interface for narrowing down on the schema, adding some notion of configurability, overriding field names, these kind of things. Just adjusting what the schema looks like. And that's the two things that we want to have in the module before we go for release, I guess.
Okay, sounds sensible. Yeah.
Anything you want to add?
No.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what my schedule or what my assignments are going to be, but definitely the plan is to help out with paving the path for both JSON API and GraphQL, and finishing up the test, fixing the foundational problems of core REST, which helps all of us, and finishing up the test coverage for the different entity types as they are exposed via the REST module. That all ties into being able to help out with JSON API and GraphQL as well, of course, because once that is tested completely, we can move that entire chunk of test coverage over to JSON API and GraphQL, and you should encounter fewer problems, and it should be fairly easy to add additional or test the additional capabilities that GraphQL and JSON API have compared to core REST. So I'm looking forward to being able to do that, to help out with those things. But I can't make a hard promise how much time, but it should be possible to at least help make an impact there.
Sounds great.
That's great. And I think that's a great way to end the call. Thank you, everyone.
Yay, GraphQL. Bye, everyone.
Hey.
Awesome.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Philip, Sebastian, do you mind if I tweet the link to the video and so people get excited about it, etc.?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.